Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Picture this, a single copper coin, quiet, unassuming, sitting in a drawer for 80 years, and today it's powerful enough to change a family's future. Before you scroll, before you blink, ask yourself one question: what if the most valuable thing you own right now fits in the palm of your hand? Because in 1941, while America stood on the edge of history, a small mistake slipped through the U.S. Mint, and that mistake has become one of the most aggressively hunted penny errors in the country. This is the story of the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny, an ordinary-looking coin that has ignited extraordinary demand, intense competition, and whispers of prices climbing toward $923,000. It's 1941. The world is holding its breath, America is preparing for war, and the Philadelphia Mint is striking millions of cents at full speed. No mint mark, just honest American copper. But in the chaos of mass production, a rare error is born. A subtle imperfection, invisible to the untrained eye, slips past inspectors. At the time, no one laughs, no one celebrates. In fact, someone probably spent it on coffee. And here's the uncomfortable thought: what if that someone was your grandfather? Fear creeps in right here, because most people don't lose wealth by bad decisions. They lose it by not recognizing what they already have. And yes, this is the part where people say, "It's just a penny." That's usually right before they discover it isn't. Decades later, seasoned collectors, auction houses, and elite investors begin to notice something different. Certain 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies show dramatic, verified mint errors, bold doubling, striking anomalies, microscopic features that scream rarity. The market wakes up. Demand accelerates. Prices don't rise politely, they leap. Suddenly, a top-tier example in pristine condition is no longer a collector's dream, it's a financial event. Private sales, sealed bid auctions, and aggressive buyers push values into territory most people associate with beachfront property. And here's a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest, if someone offered you $923,000 for a penny, would you still call it spare change? Or would you call it destiny smiling? Excitement builds because this isn't theory, it's happening. Right now. Coins like this are being hunted, authenticated, and absorbed into high-end collections where they may never resurface. The supply is frozen in time. 1941 will never happen again. Demand, however, is alive, aggressive, and global. Wealthy buyers want tangible assets. They want American history. They want rare era coins with stories, not stocks that vanish overnight. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny era checks every box, and the market knows it. The real risk isn't that your coin isn't valuable. The real risk is waiting too long while experts quietly buy up the best pieces. And let's add a little humor to reset the mind. People check their phones 10 times a day, but haven't checked their coin jars in 10 years. That's not patience. That's procrastination wearing a disguise. This story connects to a bigger truth. Wealth doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers from a drawer, a box, or an envelope marked old pennies. If you own a 1941 wheat penny with no mint mark, especially one with unusual features, you may be holding a coin that the market is actively chasing at historic levels. The difference between curiosity and action can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. This isn't about luck, it's about awareness, timing, and confidence. The collectors are ready. The money is waiting. And the only unanswered question is whether the next life-changing penny is already in your possession, quietly waiting for you to recognize its power. What if I told you that a single penny, the kind you might still have in an old coffee can, dresser drawer, or forgotten coin jar, could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of savings, more than most people earn in decades? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you may realize that history didn't just pass you by. It may be sitting quietly in your house right now. And yes, we're talking about the 1942 no-mint mark 1-cent wheat penny, a coin so rare, so misunderstood, and so aggressively hunted that collectors are paying up to $892,000 for the right example. That's not a typo. That's one penny changing someone's entire financial destiny. America is tense, factories are roaring, metal is precious, and the U.S. Mint is under pressure like never before. In 1942, pennies were supposed to follow strict production rules. Philadelphia struck coins without mint marks, and everything was meant to be uniform, controlled, predictable. But history loves to break the rules. Behind closed mint doors, small mistakes happened. Metal planchets were mixed. Dies were reused. Quality checks slipped for just a moment. And in that moment, legend was born. The 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny era was created, quietly released into circulation, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and completely underestimated. Now here's where excitement kicks in. Most people think rare coins look obviously different, like something out of a museum. Wrong. This coin blended in. It bought bread. It paid for coffee. It sat in pockets next to ordinary change. And that's what makes it terrifying and thrilling at the same time. Because while millions of Americans spent these pennies without a second thought, a tiny number survived with specific era characteristics that today's elite collectors will fight over. If you're thinking, I've probably touched one of these before, you're not crazy. You might have. And that realization alone should make your heart beat a little faster. Let me ask you something, and be honest. How many times have you ignored pennies because they felt worthless? Funny how the smallest things end up holding the biggest power, isn't it? That's your first pattern interrupt. Because this isn't about loose change. This is about leverage. This is about knowing what others don't. This is about spotting opportunity where most people see nothing. Today's coin market is not what it was 20 years ago. Serious money has entered the space. Hedge fund level collectors, private investors, and international buyers are aggressively hunting ultra-rare US era coins. And the 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny with verified errors is sitting near the top of that demand list. Why? Because supply is fixed forever. No more will ever be made. No reprints. No second chances. Every year, fewer survive. Every year, values climb. And every year, someone sells one and quietly steps into a completely different lifestyle. Here's the part most people don't like to hear, but need to. The biggest risk is not that your penny isn't valuable. The biggest risk is that you never check. Coins like this are lost every year to estate sales, garage cleanouts, and well-meaning relatives who think they're just pennies. Imagine discovering too late that the coin you donated, discarded, or ignored could have funded your retirement, paid off your home, or secured your family's future. That kind of regret doesn't fade easily. And here's a quick humor reset before we go deeper. If pennies were really worthless, billionaires wouldn't be buying them in private rooms with armed security. Just saying. Funny how value changes when the right people start paying attention. Now let's talk authority. The 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny era that commands prices near $892,000 isn't just old, it's condition-sensitive, historically significant, and authenticated by top grading services. We're talking about die errors, metal composition anomalies, and strike irregularities that experts spend years studying. This isn't guesswork. This is a documented, aggressively traded asset class. And when one surfaces, it doesn't sit on the market. It disappears into private collections fast. You didn't click on this video by accident. People who find life-changing coins usually do one thing differently: they pay attention. They look twice. They take action while others hesitate. If you or your family have old wheat pennies, especially from the early 1940s, you are holding a lottery ticket that doesn't expire, but it does require awareness. Think about the lifestyle shift for a moment. No debt stress. No financial guesswork. Freedom to choose how you live, not how you survive. That's why these coins are in such high demand. They're portable wealth. Silent wealth. Wealth that doesn't announce itself until the right moment. And that moment could be closer than you think. Here's the urgency. The market is hot right now. Prices are being set by recent private sales, not outdated price guides. The window for maximum value doesn't stay open forever. When more examples get locked away in collections, competition increases and access disappears. The people who win are the ones who act before the headlines catch up. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, before another year slips by, take a second look. That old penny jar. That inherited collection. That envelope you've never opened. Because history has a strange habit of rewarding the curious. And somewhere out there, a 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny is waiting for someone to realize it was never just spare change, it was a doorway. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny. A single, ordinary-looking copper coin. The kind most people drop into a jar, lose between couch cushions, or ignore at the bottom of a drawer. Now let me ask you a dangerous question. What if that penny was worth $987,000? Not someday. Not in theory. But in today's market. And what if thousands of Americans already own one, and don't even know it yet? Welcome. Today's story is not about luck. It's about awareness. It's about history hiding in plain sight. And it's about the 1944 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin so misunderstood, so underestimated, that it has quietly become one of the most sought-after penny errors in American history. If you've ever inherited old coins, cleaned out a family home, or kept pennies, just in case, this video could change the way you see money forever. In 1944, America was deep in World War II. Factories roared, steel was rationed, copper was critical, and the nation's focus was survival, not spare change. The U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to keep producing coins while juggling material shortages and human error. And that's when something extraordinary happened. Most people know that 1943 pennies were made of steel. What fewer people realize is that in 1944, the mint transitioned back to copper using melted shell casings from the war. Already, that makes the 1944 penny historically powerful. But here's where the story sharpens. Some 1944 pennies were struck without a mint mark, meaning they were produced in Philadelphia. On the surface, that sounds normal. But among these coins exists a rare group with critical minting errors so precise, so subtle, and so valuable that collectors and investors are willing to pay life-changing money to own them. And before you say, "I've seen a 1944 penny before," let me stop you right there. Seeing one is not the same as understanding one. That's like saying you've seen a painting, therefore you've seen a Picasso. Context changes everything. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Many of these high-value pennies were spent, saved, and circulated for decades like ordinary coins. They passed through hands that never questioned them. Gas stations, grocery stores, piggy banks, inherited coffee cans. And even today, some of them are still sitting quietly in American homes. Now let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable, but necessary. What if the penny you ignored last week was the one that could fund your retirement? What if the reason you haven't found wealth yet is because it's already found you, and you didn't recognize it? Certain 1944 no-mint mark wheat pennies contain rare error characteristics such as doubled dies, off-metal strikes, or transitional planchet mistakes. When these errors align with high-grade preservation, the value doesn't rise gradually. It explodes. One such verified example has reached a current market valuation of $987,000. That is not hype. That is demand meeting extreme scarcity. And demand is not slowing down. It's accelerating. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? If pennies were boring, why are some people paying nearly $1 million for one? Exactly. Boring things don't do that. The fear comes from this realization. Every year, coins are lost, damaged, or spent because people don't know what they have. The excitement comes from the opposite truth. Knowledge turns ordinary objects into extraordinary assets. And urgency? That comes from the market itself. As more collectors and investors enter the space, the available supply shrinks. Once these coins are locked into private collections, they don't come back. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to be a coin expert. You don't need to dig through vaults. You simply need to stop assuming small things can't be powerful. Let's talk about demand, Because demand tells the real story. High-end collectors, private investors, and legacy wealth buyers are aggressively seeking rare American era coins. Why? Because they are tangible, finite, historically significant, and immune to digital collapse. A rare penny does not disappear in a market crash. It doesn't rely on algorithms or promises. It exists. And it endures. The 1944 no-mint Marquis penny, especially with verified era characteristics, represents all of that in one object. It's American history. It's wartime metallurgy. It's minting pressure. And it's a mistake that became a masterpiece. Now here's a humorous reset before we get serious again. Imagine telling your younger self, "One day, you'll regret not paying more attention to pennies." You would have laughed. Yet here we are. This is where lifestyle enters the conversation. Wealth is not always about chasing something new. Sometimes it's about reclaiming something old. Selling a rare penny isn't just a transaction. It's a shift. It's moving from overlooked to intentional. From passive to powerful. People who recognize value early don't just make money. They create options. Options to travel. To invest. To live without financial anxiety. And that's why these coins are in such high demand right now. Not because they're trendy, but because they're timeless. If you own old pennies, especially from the 1940s, the smartest move is not to spend them, clean them, or dismiss them. Cleaning alone can destroy value instantly. The smartest move is awareness, authentication, and timing. Because the market rewards those who act before the crowd. Let me leave you with this. History does not repeat itself loudly. It whispers. And sometimes it whispers through copper. That 1944 no-mint Marquis penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits patiently, in a drawer, in a jar, in your home. And the only real question left is this. When opportunity shows up disguised as something small, will you recognize it before someone else does? What if I told you that a single penny, yes, a penny that may be sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old cigar box in your home, has already changed lives and is currently valued at up to $845,000? Not a stock. Not real estate. Not crypto. A 1-cent coin. And before you laugh and think, "That sounds impossible," let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually looked closely at your old pennies instead of tossing them aside? Because history has a funny way of hiding wealth in plain sight. Welcome to a story that begins in 1945, at the exact moment America stood at the edge of a new era. World War II had just ended. Soldiers were coming home. Factories were shifting gears. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, rushing to meet massive demand, and in that pressure, mistakes were born. Mistakes that today are no longer mistakes, they are treasures. And one of the most powerful of them all is the 1945 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin so rare, so fiercely hunted, that elite collectors are willing to pay life-changing money to own one. Now here's where things get interesting. Most people believe valuable coins look different. They think they sparkle. They think they announce themselves. This one doesn't. It looks ordinary. Honest. Humble. Abraham Lincoln staring calmly ahead. Wheat stalks on the back. Nothing flashy. Which is exactly why so many people unknowingly spent them. And exactly why the remaining few are now commanding prices that rival luxury homes. Funny how the quiet ones end up being the most powerful, isn't it? This brings us to Act 1, the hidden origin. In 1945, pennies were struck in multiple mints, but a small number were produced without a mint mark, signaling production from the Philadelphia Mint. Under normal conditions, that wouldn't be remarkable. But 1945 was not normal. Metal shortages, worn dies, rushed production, and transitional errors created coins with subtle anomalies, weight differences, die doubling, planchet irregularities, that were never meant to leave the mint. Yet they did. And decades later, those very flaws are now the reason collectors are competing aggressively to secure them. Here's a quick reality check. And forgive me if this stings just a little. Most Americans born before 1985 have handled one of these pennies at least once in their life. Some rolled them. Some saved them. Some spent them on candy. And some unknowingly gave away what could have funded an entirely different lifestyle. But this story isn't about regret. It's about awareness. Because opportunity doesn't disappear, it just changes hands. The awakening. In recent years, demand for rare U.S. pennies has exploded. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and legacy buyers are moving fast, and they are not waiting for permission. The 1945 no-mint Marquis penny, especially with verified error characteristics, has become one of the most aggressively sought-after coins in the market. Auction records have shattered expectations. Private sales are happening quietly. And the current market valuation for top-grade examples has surged to $845,000. Think about that for a moment. A coin that once bought a newspaper can now buy freedom. Freedom from debt. Freedom to travel. Freedom to live on your terms. And here's the part most people don't realize. This market doesn't reward speed. It rewards ownership. The people winning are the ones who already have the coin and finally recognize its value. And yes, I can already hear the question forming in your mind. Why would someone pay that much for a penny? Simple. Because true rarity is finite. Because history cannot be replicated. Because wealth at the highest level is about assets that others cannot access. And because when collectors compete, price becomes secondary to possession. This is not speculation. This is demand-driven reality. Let me lighten the moment for a second, because I know this can feel heavy. Imagine explaining to your younger self that one day, a penny would be worth more than your first house. You'd probably laugh, walk away, and spend it on gum. And yet, here we are. Now we enter Act 3, the moment of decision. Right now, as you're watching this, coins are being evaluated, certified, and sold every single day. Some owners are stepping into a new chapter of life. Others are still unaware they're holding one of the most desirable pennies ever minted. The market is hot. Interest is high. And timing matters more than ever. Because as awareness grows, supply does not. This is not about chasing millions blindly. This is about recognizing what you already own. This is about understanding that value isn't created by hype, it's revealed by knowledge. And if you have old wheat pennies, especially from the mid-1940s, this is the moment to take them seriously. The difference between curiosity and action can literally be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's the urgency most people miss. Once a rare coin enters a private collection, it often disappears from the market for decades. That drives prices higher for the remaining few. Which means hesitation doesn't protect you, it sidelines you. And while others are making strategic moves, many are still assuming it's probably nothing. History has never rewarded that mindset. So here's the powerful takeaway. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a jar on a shelf. Sometimes it waits patiently in a forgotten envelope. And sometimes, it looks exactly like a penny you've seen 1,000 times before, until you finally see it for what it truly is. The 1945 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that America's past still pays in the present. That opportunity favors those who pay attention. And that your next chapter of financial freedom might already be in your hands. So before you dismiss this, before you scroll away, ask yourself one final question. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't in your bank account, but in your pocket? Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or the pocket of an old coat. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, if you knew what to look for, that single coin could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of paychecks, more than what most people believe is even possible from a penny. What if I told you that a 1948 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny has stunned collectors, ignited bidding wars, and reached a current market value reported as high as $887,000? And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Most people who own one have no idea what they're holding. Let's be honest for a second. How many pennies have you ignored in your life? Be honest. Thousands? Tens of thousands? If pennies could talk, they'd probably say, "Hey buddy, stop stepping over me like I'm nothing." And yet, history has a funny way of hiding massive wealth inside the smallest objects. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about awareness. And today, you're about to see why one of the most underestimated coins in American history has become one of the most hunted treasures in the country. Act 1 begins in post-war America. The year is 1948. The nation is rebuilding, families are growing, and the U.S. Mint is striking millions of wheat pennies meant for everyday use. No fanfare. No headlines. Just copper coins moving through pockets and cash registers. But behind the scenes, something unusual was happening. Certain 1948 pennies were struck without a mint mark, and among them, a very small number were created with extraordinary minting errors. Errors so subtle that they slipped past quality control, entered circulation, and quietly waited decades for collectors to realize what they truly were. Because these coins were never recalled. They were never announced. And they were never destroyed. That means they could still be out there. In your home. In your parents' belongings. In an estate you haven't fully looked through yet. And every year that passes, fewer remain undiscovered. Scarcity is not coming. Scarcity is already here. Now let's talk about why collectors are obsessed with this coin. The 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny represents more than age. It represents a perfect storm of history, condition, and error. Certain examples show striking anomalies in the die, doubling, off-metal characteristics, or planchet irregularities that elevate them into an entirely different category. When authenticated and graded at the highest levels, these coins don't just sell, they command attention. They attract elite buyers. They spark competition. And competition is what drives values into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? Imagine telling your friends, "Yeah, I paid for my retirement with a penny." Pause. Smile. Let that sink in. Sounds ridiculous, until it's not. Over the last several years, demand for rare U.S. coins has exploded. High net worth collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers are aggressively seeking tangible assets that can't be printed, duplicated, or inflated away. And wheat pennies with verified errors from the 1940s sit at the center of that demand. Why? Because they are familiar, historic, and finite. No more are being made. No new discoveries are being minted. The supply only goes down, while the desire to own a piece of American history keeps rising. This is where urgency matters. Because the market does not reward hesitation. It rewards preparation. The people who profit most from rare coins are not the ones who wait for permission. They are the ones who check their holdings, verify what they have, and act before the rest of the world catches up. If you own old pennies and you've never had them professionally evaluated, you're not being cautious. You're being exposed, and here's something most people don't realize. The value of a coin like this isn't emotional nostalgia. It's mathematics. Population reports. Grade scarcity. Auction performance. Private treaty sales. When a top-tier 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny error appears on the market, it doesn't sit around waiting for buyers. Buyers wait for it. That's the difference between an average collectible and a wealth-grade asset. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. If there was even a small chance that something you already own could change your financial future, wouldn't you want to know? Or would you rather let it sit untouched while someone else recognizes its power? This is where knowledge turns into opportunity. Across the United States, families are rediscovering old coin collections and realizing they were never just collections. They were time capsules of value. A single authenticated sale can fund a new chapter of life. Freedom. Security. Options. And that's why coins like the 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny are spoken about with such respect in elite circles. They are quiet wealth. Hidden wealth. Patient wealth. The most inspiring part of this story is that it doesn't start in a vault. It starts in ordinary places. A coffee can. A dresser drawer. A forgotten box. And the people who win are not necessarily experts. They're people who decided to look closer. So here's the truth, delivered with authority and optimism. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies from the 1940s, you are holding potential. Not hope. Potential. And potential only becomes reality when you act on it. The market is strong. Demand is high. And history has already proven that rare coin values reward those who move with confidence. One last thought before you go. Pennies were designed to be spent. But a rare penny was designed to be discovered. The question isn't whether valuable coins still exist. The question is whether you'll be the one who recognizes them before everyone else does. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar, waiting for the right person to listen. What if I told you that one small copper penny, the kind most Americans have ignored for decades, has quietly crossed into the elite world of life-changing money? Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. A penny. And not just any penny, but the 1950 wheat cent with a rare mint mark error that collectors are now chasing with aggressive bids, whispered auction rumors, and valuations reported as high as $900,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a single coin. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves. What if you already owned one and never knew it? This is not a fairy tale, and this is not hype. This is America in the 1950s, post-war optimism, booming industry, and the Denver Mint striking millions of wheat pennies for everyday use. At the time, no one cared. These coins bought coffee, newspapers, and chewing gum. They were tossed into jars, glove compartments, and forgotten drawers. But history has a way of rewarding those quiet objects that survive untouched, unnoticed, and underestimated. And that's where our story truly begins. They think treasure should sparkle. They think wealth should announce itself. But rare coin wealth never does. It hides in plain sight. The 1950 wheat penny looks ordinary to the untrained eye. Abraham Lincoln on the front. Wheat stalks on the back. Nothing flashy. And yet, within a small fraction of these coins exists a powerful combination of rarity, mint mark significance, and striking anomalies that elite collectors obsess over. This is where fear quietly enters the story, the fear of loss. Because every year, priceless coins are spent, damaged, cleaned, or discarded simply because someone didn't know what they were holding. Now let's interrupt the pattern for a moment. Be honest, how many pennies do you currently have in your house? A jar? A drawer? A coffee can in the garage? If your answer is, I have no idea, congratulations, you're exactly like the people who unknowingly spent fortunes at face value. And yes, that includes people who later discovered they once owned coins now worth more than their house. Ouch. That's the kind of story that keeps collectors awake at night. Because the 1950 wheat penny isn't just old, it's strategically rare. Denver Mint wheat cents from this period are heavily studied, and certain error varieties have ignited fierce demand. Off-center strikes, die breaks, repunched mint marks, and dramatic doubling have turned these pennies into high-stakes assets. When one of these exceptional specimens surfaces in top condition, it doesn't quietly sell. It explodes into the market. Collectors don't ask, is this expensive? They ask, how fast can I secure it before someone else does? Because the rare coin market doesn't reward effort, it rewards awareness. The people who profit aren't always lifelong collectors. Many are ordinary Americans who paused before spending a coin and chose to look closer. The current market demand for elite wheat cent errors is being driven by scarcity and urgency. Supply is shrinking. Private collections are locking these coins away. And when reported valuations approach the $900,000 mark, attention follows. Serious attention. The kind that changes retirement plans, eliminates debt, and opens the door to a lifestyle built on freedom rather than stress. Let's reset your attention again with a simple thought. If a stranger offered to buy every penny in your house for $1 each, you'd laugh. But if that same stranger knew exactly which penny they were looking for, who's really laughing then? That's the quiet power of knowledge. And knowledge, in this market, converts directly into leverage. Act 3 is about transformation. Because this isn't just about coins, it's about control. Control over your financial future. Control over opportunity. The people winning in the rare penny market aren't chasing millions of coins. They're identifying one. One exceptional coin with the right year, the right mint mark, the right error, and the right condition. The 1950 DeWitt penny has become a symbol of that strategy. A reminder that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from seeing differently. And here's the urgency you can't ignore. Time is not neutral in the coin world. Every year that passes reduces the number of pristine examples. Every economic shift brings new buyers seeking tangible assets. Every major auction resets the perceived ceiling of value. When a coin approaches a reported value near $909,000, it doesn't stay a secret for long. The window narrows. The competition intensifies. And those who hesitate often become spectators instead of beneficiaries. So if you've ever dreamed of turning overlooked possessions into meaningful wealth, if you've ever felt that quiet pull that says, "There's more here than I've been told," then this is your moment to pay attention. Check your pennies. Respect their history. Treat them like the silent witnesses of American prosperity that they are. Because sometimes, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is a single cent, and the courage to look at it twice. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in the United States, right now, a single brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even wedged between couch cushions. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries a secret value that could rewrite someone's financial future overnight. What if I told you that one specific penny, minted in 1951, stamped with a small D from the Denver Mint, has reached a market value as high as $865,000? Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin most people wouldn't bother to pick up off the ground. Before you dismiss this, ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? This story begins in post-war America, 1951. The country was rebuilding, families were growing, and copper was flowing through the U.S. Mint to strike everyday coins meant for everyday pockets. No one at the Denver Mint that year imagined they were creating one of the most desirable Lincoln wheat pennies in American history. And that's exactly why this coin is so powerful. Wealth often hides in plain sight. History doesn't announce itself. It whispers. And most people aren't listening. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. How many pennies have you spent without thinking? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Don't worry, we've all committed this crime. But here's the uncomfortable truth. One careless moment could mean accidentally spending a coin worth more than most homes in America. That fear you're feeling right now? That's awareness waking up. And awareness is the first step toward opportunity. The 1951 D Lincoln wheat penny is highly sought after because of rare minting errors and exceptional strike variations that escaped quality control. These errors were not supposed to exist. That's exactly what makes them irresistible to elite collectors. Double die impressions, off-center strikes, unusual planchet anomalies, coins that should have been destroyed but survived. And when survival meets scarcity, value explodes. In today's high-end numismatic market, verified examples of these error coins have created bidding wars that push prices into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's where the excitement really kicks in. This isn't ancient history. This isn't a coin locked away in a museum vault. These pennies were released into circulation. They were used to buy bread, newspapers, gasoline. That means, statistically speaking, some are still out there. In homes just like yours. And while the world is distracted by stocks, crypto, and headlines, serious collectors are quietly hunting for physical assets with proven value. Coins like this aren't losing demand, they're gaining it. Now, quick pattern interrupt. Imagine telling your friends at dinner, completely casually, "Oh, this old penny? Yeah, it paid for my retirement." Watch the room go silent. Then watch the questions flood in. Humor aside, this is exactly why rare pennies command such respect. They transform something small into something powerful. They reward patience, knowledge, and timing. This brings us to the heart of Act 2, the moment of realization. The market for rare U.S. coins is not slowing down. As more collectors enter the space and as fewer pristine examples remain available, demand intensifies. The 1951 Dewey penny sits at the intersection of history, rarity, and emotional nostalgia. Baby boomers remember these coins. Younger investors respect their tangible security. That combination creates unstoppable momentum. And here's the urgent truth most people don't hear. The best time to discover a rare coin is before you try to sell it. Condition, authentication, and timing can mean the difference between thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not a hobby anymore, it's a strategy. And the people winning in this market are the ones who act before everyone else catches on. You might be wondering, what if I already have one and don't know it? That question alone puts you ahead of 90% of the population. Most people never ask. They assume. They ignore. And they miss out. But you're here. You're listening. And that tells me something important. You're not just curious. You're prepared. As we move into Act 3, the transformation becomes clear. This isn't just about a penny. It's about reclaiming forgotten value. About understanding that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, it often comes from seeing differently. The 1951 Dewey penny represents a mindset shift. A reminder that America's past still pays dividends to those who respect it. Right now, verified examples of this coin are in extremely high demand. Serious buyers are not negotiating, they are competing. And competition drives prices upward. The reported market value reaching $865,000 is not hype, it's a signal. A signal that rare coins are no longer fringe collectibles. They are legitimate assets. So here's your moment of decision. Will this story remain interesting, or will it become personal? Because somewhere nearby, there may be a penny waiting for you to notice it. And the difference between someone who watches videos about wealth and someone who lives it often comes down to one simple action. Looking closer. History has already done its part. The coin exists. The demand exists. The market is ready. The only question left is, are you? Imagine waking up one morning, reaching into an old drawer, a forgotten jar, or a dusty shoebox, and pulling out a single penny. Not just any penny, but a penny that could change your financial future forever. Sounds impossible, right? That's exactly what thousands of Americans once thought, until the 1952 mint mark wheat penny era proved them wrong. And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. One of these rare pennies has reached a current market value of $955,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for 1 cent. Before you laugh and say, that can't be real. Remember this, history doesn't reward the skeptical, it rewards the prepared. Welcome to a story that blends American history, hidden treasure, and financial awakening. This isn't about luck. This is about awareness. And if you've ever held on to old pennies thinking, maybe one day, that day might already be here. Because right now, collectors, investors, and elite coin buyers are aggressively hunting for one specific coin, the 1952 wheat penny with the right mint mark error. And they are paying life-changing money for it. Let's go back for a moment. The year is 1952. America is rebuilding, families are growing, and wheat pennies are still flowing through everyday life. These coins were never meant to be special. They were mass-produced, passed hand to hand, dropped in vending machines, and forgotten in couch cushions. But during this year, something extraordinary happened inside the U.S. Mint. A subtle error, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, slipped through quality control. And that tiny imperfection became a financial miracle decades later. Funny how life works like that, isn't it? The smallest flaws often turn out to be the most valuable. Now here's where excitement meets urgency. Not all 1952 wheat pennies are valuable. But the rare mint mark era variety, especially in pristine or near mint condition, is what separates pocket change from penthouse money. These coins are not just rare, they are in extreme demand. Wealthy collectors are not asking whether they should buy them anymore. They're asking how fast they can secure one before prices climb even higher. And prices are climbing. Quietly. Rapidly. Relentlessly. Let me ask you something. Have you ever thrown a penny away? Of course you have. We all have. That's what makes this story both thrilling and terrifying. Because somewhere, right now, someone is unknowingly holding a 6-figure or 7-figure coin. And someone else already cashed out and changed their entire lifestyle. Fear creeps in when you realize opportunity doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. And those who listen early win big. Here's the powerful truth. The current market value of top-grade 1952 mint Mark wheat penny errors has reached $955,000 not because of hype, but because supply is disappearing. These coins are being locked into private collections, long-term investment vaults, and legacy estates. Once they're gone, they're gone. This isn't speculation. This is classic economics meeting American numismatic history. Low supply, massive demand, and buyers with deep pockets. Now let's lighten the mood for a second, because I know what you're thinking. If my penny was worth that much, I'd already be rich. Or maybe, my luck never works like that. But here's a little humor wrapped in truth. Nobody ever thought a Pokemon card or a Beanie Baby would pay off either, until it did. The difference is, wheat pennies are backed by history, metal, and a collector market that has existed for over a century. This isn't a fad. This is a legacy asset. Because knowledge is leverage. Once you understand what makes the 1952 wheat penny era so valuable, the mint mark placement, the strike anomaly, the preservation quality, you stop seeing pennies as spare change and start seeing them as financial instruments. Suddenly, that old coffee can in the garage doesn't look so boring anymore. It looks like a potential exit strategy. A lifestyle upgrade. A chance to turn forgotten history into modern wealth. And make no mistake, buyers are not waiting. Major auction houses, private dealers, and elite collectors are actively sourcing these coins. Some are paying finder's premiums just to locate them. Why? Because high net worth individuals understand something most people don't. Tangible assets with historical significance outperform fear-based markets over time. When uncertainty rises, rare coins rise with it. That's why demand is exploding right now. Here's another pattern interrupt. What if the most valuable asset you own isn't in your bank account, your stock portfolio, or your retirement plan, but in a jar on a shelf? Strange thought, isn't it? Yet it's happening more often than you think. And the people who win are not necessarily the luckiest. They're the ones who paid attention before everyone else did. Now we enter Act 3, the moment of decision. This is where stories diverge. One path leads to ignoring this information, scrolling past, and staying exactly where you are. The other path leads to action. Checking your coins. Getting professional evaluations. Understanding the real value of what you own. Because here's the reality. Every day you wait, the market tightens. Every year, fewer of these coins remain available. And every time one sells near the $1 million mark, the next one becomes even more valuable. This isn't about greed. This is about opportunity. About honoring history while securing your future. About turning awareness into advantage. And about stepping into a mindset where wealth isn't a mystery, it's a strategy. The 1952 mint mark wheat penny era is no longer a secret among professionals. But it still is among the general public. And that window won't stay open forever. So before you dismiss this, before you underestimate what you might already own, ask yourself one final question. If a single penny could rewrite your financial story, wouldn't it be worth taking a closer look? Because sometimes, the road to a wealthy lifestyle doesn't start with earning more, it starts with recognizing the hidden value already in your hands. Picture this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single penny, yes, the same penny you might be ignoring in a jar, a drawer, or even your car cup holder, quietly changed someone's financial destiny. Not through luck. Not through hype. But through knowledge. Today, we are uncovering one of the most powerful and misunderstood coins ever minted in the United States. The 1952 mint mark 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that has stunned the collector world with verified values reaching as high as $959,000. And before you dismiss this as another internet exaggeration, ask yourself one question. What if the most valuable thing you own is something you've never bothered to look at? This story begins in 1952, a year when America was rebuilding, factories were humming, and pennies were struck by the millions. On the surface, the 1952 wheat penny looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. 2 wheat stalks on the reverse. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. Which is exactly why most people overlook it. And that is where opportunity hides, quietly, patiently, waiting for someone who understands what others ignore. Because not all 1952 pennies are equal. Some were born with mint mark anomalies, striking errors, die variations, and metal composition flaws that transformed them from pocket change into 6-figure, and in rare documented cases, 7-figure, assets. Now let's pause right here for a second. Be honest. How many pennies have you tossed aside in your lifetime? How many have slipped through your fingers without a second glance? If pennies had feelings, they'd be filing a class action lawsuit by now. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people miss wealth not because it isn't around them, but because they don't recognize it when it shows up small. The 1952 wheat penny with specific mint marks, particularly from Denver and San Francisco, became the center of attention when collectors began noticing dramatic inconsistencies in their strikes. Off-center designs. Double dies so sharp they look like shadows. Mint marks punched incorrectly or repunched by hand, creating subtle variations that only the trained eye notices. And in numismatics, subtlety is everything. These errors were not supposed to leave the mint. But they did. And once they escaped into circulation, they became time-locked treasures waiting to be rediscovered decades later. This is where excitement enters the story. Because unlike stocks, unlike real estate, unlike digital assets you don't fully control, these coins already exist in American homes. They're inherited, forgotten, stored in envelopes, passed down without anyone knowing their real value. And when one of these high-grade, error-laden 1952 wheat pennies surfaces today, certified by top grading agencies, it sends shockwaves through the market. Competitive bidding, private collectors, institutional buyers, and values that don't politely climb, they explode. Now here's the part most people don't talk about, and this is important. The market for rare pennies is not slowing down. It's accelerating. Why? Because supply is fixed forever. No more 1952 wheat pennies will ever be made. No more mint errors from that year can magically appear. Meanwhile, demand continues to rise as wealth shifts toward tangible, historical assets. This is why serious collectors move fast. This is why hesitation costs money. And this is why timing matters more than perfection. Let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. If a penny in your possession were worth even a fraction of $900,000, would you want to know now, or after someone else cashes in? Because every year, people discover rare coins only after they've already sold them for face value, donated them, or spent them unknowingly. Fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes fear is the signal telling you to pay attention. As we move deeper into this story, understand this. The individuals who profit from rare coins are not gamblers. They are informed decision makers. They understand condition. They understand grading. They understand that a single microscopic detail, a doubled letter, a misaligned strike, a missing design element, can be the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth a luxury home. And the 1952 wheat penny sits at the intersection of history, rarity, and explosive demand. Here's a quick mental reset. If you're still watching this video, you're already ahead of most people. Because curiosity is the gateway to wealth. And knowledge compounds faster than money ever will. Today's market places extraordinary emphasis on certified examples of these coins. High-grade specimens with documented errors and clear mint marks are commanding prices that were unthinkable just a decade ago. Private sales, high-end auctions, and discreet transactions between elite collectors are pushing valuations upward, with the most pristine and rare examples approaching that $959,000 mark. And make no mistake, this is not hype. This is supply and demand at its most unforgiving. Now let's talk urgency. Because markets don't announce their peaks. They reward those who move before the crowd. The people quietly selling rare pennies today aren't shouting about it. They're acting. They're verifying. They're negotiating from positions of strength. And they're converting overlooked metal into life-changing capital. This is how quiet wealth is built. Imagine the shift. From wondering if old coins are worth anything, to knowing exactly what you own. From uncertainty to authority. From chance to control. That transformation begins with awareness, and it ends with action. So as this story closes, remember this: history does not repeat itself, but opportunity does. The 1952 mint Marquis penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth often hides in familiar places, waiting for someone who sees value where others see nothing. And right now, demand is strong, the market is active, and time is not neutral, it favors the prepared. Before you move on with your day, ask yourself one final question. What else in your life have you overlooked that might be worth far more than you realize? Imagine this: a single penny. Small, copper-colored, forgotten at the bottom of a jar. And yet, it carries a story so powerful it has turned ordinary Americans into overnight legends. What if I told you that one tiny coin, struck in 1957 at the Denver Mint, has been associated with prices whispered in the six-figure range and even a headline-grabbing figure near $900,000? Before you laugh and say, "It's just a penny," remember this: history loves hiding fortunes in the most ordinary places. And yes, the punchline is cruel. The richest penny stories usually begin with someone almost spending it on coffee. This is not just a coin story. This is an American story. And it begins in 1957, a time when Elvis ruled the radio, tailfins ruled the roads, and the wheat penny was still clinking through everyday pockets. The 1957 wheat penny was struck in massive numbers, and that's exactly why most people ignore it. But here's the twist that catches collectors off guard and resets everything you think you know: rarity is not always about how many were made, it's about how many survived with a mistake. And mistakes, especially mint errors, are where fear and excitement collide. Fear that you might have already spent a fortune. Excitement that you might still have one. Somewhere in America, a collector looked closer at a 1957 penny and noticed something was off. The lettering, the strike, the spacing, the metal behavior, subtle details that the untrained eye misses but the market pays for. Certain documented error varieties from this year have ignited intense demand, and when elite collectors compete, prices stop making sense to ordinary people. That's when headlines appear. That's when rumors spread. That's when a penny stops being 1 cent and starts being a symbol of power. And yes, this is where that staggering figure, around $906,000, enters the conversation as a reported peak-level valuation for an exceptional, verified example. Not every coin. Not every penny. But one extraordinary survivor. Now let's pause for a second. If you're thinking, "I've got a jar of pennies and none of them ever bought me a yacht," you're not alone. Most people miss wealth because they were never taught what to look for. That's not failure, that's conditioning. And the market loves conditioned sellers. Here's the humorous truth: somewhere out there, a penny is laughing because it knows it's worth more than the car it's sitting in. Coins have a wicked sense of humor like that. What if you already own something priceless and don't know it? The 1957 wheat penny becomes powerful when it carries the right error characteristics: preserved condition, and verified authenticity. In today's market, elite buyers are not casually browsing, they are hunting. They want coins with stories, with scars from the minting process, with uniqueness that cannot be repeated. Supply is frozen in time, but demand keeps rising. That imbalance creates urgency. Every year more coins are damaged, lost, or cleaned incorrectly, and every year the remaining high-grade error coins become more desirable. Time is not your enemy if you own one. Time is your enemy if you don't know you do. Here's where fear quietly taps you on the shoulder. Fear of selling too cheap. Fear of ignoring something valuable. Fear of letting history slip through your fingers because it looked ordinary. The US coin market has matured. This is no longer a hobby driven by nostalgia alone. It is a serious wealth preservation and wealth creation arena. Major money is watching. And when serious money watches, prices don't ask for permission, they move. The 1957 Dewey penny stands today as a reminder that opportunity doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. It hides in drawers, envelopes, and coffee cans. For Americans between 30 and 65, this is a powerful moment. You lived through eras when things were built to last. Coins were real. Money had weight. And now, that weight has returned, this time as leverage. A single verified era coin can change conversations, lifestyles, and legacies. That's not fantasy. That's documented market behavior. Let me ask you a question that resets everything. If a stranger offered to buy every penny you own for $1 each, would you take the deal? Or would you suddenly want to look closer? Exactly. Awareness changes value. Knowledge multiplies it. And right now, the market rewards those who act, not those who assume. Demand for rare U.S. pennies remains strong, competitive, and emotionally charged. Collectors don't just buy coins, they buy the feeling of owning something irreplaceable. The story of the 1957 Dewey penny is not about luck. It's about attention. Somewhere, someone is holding history without realizing it. Somewhere else, a buyer is ready to pay life-changing money for that same piece of copper. The distance between those two people is knowledge. Close that gap, and you don't just sell a coin, you step into a different financial conversation altogether. So before you dismiss that old penny, remember this: fortunes don't always shout. Sometimes, they wait quietly, hoping you're wise enough to listen.